You know, when you think of the Perhentian Islands, you're probably picturing these perfect beaches and crystal clear turquoise water. But for centuries, this was no tourist getaway. Nope. It was a rugged frontier, and it was ruled by a line of warrior shamans, men who commanded not just the people, but the very spirits of the land and the sea.
So that's the big question, right? This was the central challenge facing the island's first inhabitants. Without all the usual structures of a kingdom or an empire, how do you even begin to forge a society, protect your people, and maintain some kind of order? Well, the answer they found was unique, it was powerful, and deeply mystical. And it all starts with one man.
All right, so our story kicks off in the late 18th century with a guy named Baton Menina. Now, he wasn't a king or a nobleman. He was actually a rebel from the Rio Archipelago. He had been fighting back against Dutch colonial expansion by attacking their trading ships, and now he was a fugitive, basically looking for a place to completely disappear.
And he and his family found their sanctuary right here, on Pulo Perhentian. Up until then, the islands were really just a temporary pit stop for sailors and merchants. But Baton Mina, he changed all of that. He established the very first permanent settlement at a place called Teluk Dalam, transforming this transient waypoint into a real home.
So how did this rebel leader actually govern his new community? This is where the whole system gets truly fascinating. He wasn't a mayor or a chief in the way we'd understand it today. He was the first in a line of leaders who held a very specific hereditary title that combined all those roles and then some.
And that title was Batin. A Batin wasn't just one thing. He had to be a skilled warrior, for sure. He had to be an administrator who could look out for his people. But most importantly, he had to be a powerful shaman, or bomo as it's known locally, with a deep, deep knowledge of the spiritual world.
And this slide just illustrates the two sides of his power perfectly. On one hand, as the spiritual leader, he was the community's healer and its protector against unseen forces. But on the other hand, as the temporal ruler, he was a warrior, a judge, and even a tax collector, demanding tribute from trading ships that wanted shelter in his waters. This dual authority was the absolute bedrock of his rule. Okay, so Baton Mina's reputation for power wasn't just some local legend. It actually reached the ears of the Sultan of Terengganu on the mainland who, decided to put him to the test. The Sultan announced that he was mysteriously and terribly sick, and he summoned all the greatest healers in the land to his palace.
So, one by one, the best healers in the kingdom tried and failed to cure the Sultan's non-existent illness. But when Baton Mina was brought before him, he took one look and just declared that the Sultan wasn't sick at all. He was just testing them. This incredible display of insight did way more than just prove his power. It actually secured the autonomy and protection of the Sultanate for his people for generations to come. His authority wasn't just local anymore. It was now state-sanctioned.
And this special status, it was passed down through a long and really influential line of Batons, which you can see right here. It all starts with Mina, the founder. He's followed by his brother Jamal, whose leadership was defined by a huge crisis. Later on, in the 20th century, Baton Talib would emerge as the great unifier, completely reshaping the community. And the story wraps up in 1990 with Baton Sadek, the final inheritor of the title. This is basically our roadmap for the rest of the story.
But here's the thing. What happens when a system is so dependent on the personal power of one man? After Baton Mina's death, his successors and the entire community would face a terrifying test, discovering that his unique spiritual authority was not so easily replaced. Under his brother, Baton Jamal, things just fell apart. The spiritual protection that Mina had provided seemed to vanish right along with him. The settlement was apparently tormented by malevolent spirits, and at the exact same time, their crops were being destroyed by monkeys and rats. Both the physical and spiritual worlds were in total chaos. The situation got so unbearable that Baton Jamal made a pretty drastic decision. He led the entire community to abandon their home on Perhentian and relocate to the mainland. I mean, that's a huge deal. It was a stark admission that without the right kind of power at the top, their island sanctuary was basically uninhabitable. But, of course, the story doesn't end there. The islanders did eventually return, but this time, things were going to be different. The challenges they faced forced them to evolve, and a new leader would emerge to build a more resilient and organized society. So let's see how this new community took shape. So when they came back, they didn't go back to their old village. Instead, they bravely established a new home in a place they had previously feared, an area on the smaller island known as Pasir Hantu, or Ghost Sands, because, it was believed to be haunted. Their return was this incredible moment of conquering old fears.
So, a fundamental change is happening.
Before the 20th century, the islanders lived in these small, scattered family groups. It was hard to administer, and the community was really decentralized. But in the early 1900s, a new leader named Batin Talib came along and changed everything.
Batin Talib's great legacy was convincing everyone to come together and live in one unified village, the very one that exists today. This was a massive step. It shifted the whole system of governance away from depending solely on the personal charisma and magic of one man, and toward a much more organized, community-focused administration.
All right, so this new unified structure really set the stage for the final chapter of the Batin legacy. The era of the warrior shaman was coming to a quiet, peaceful close, making way for a modern system of governance.
And that end came in 1990 with the death of Batin Sidak. He was the final man to inherit the title, and with his passing, a tradition that had defined the island for over 2 centuries finally came to an end.
Think about it. For centuries, power on the island was inherited. It was all about bloodline and spiritual connection. But when that line ended with Batin Sidak, the power didn't pass to another shaman. Instead, the community took a totally new path, appointing their first official village head, a leader chosen by the people themselves.
And that leaves us with this incredible final thought. The story of the Perhentian Islands isn't just about some lost history of spirit kings. It's a remarkable case study of evolution. It poses a question that really echoes through history. What happens when an ancient world, one built on magic and bloodline, finally gives way to a new one, built on community and choice?